Okay, welcome to another episode of Political Animals, where we always give you an analytical perspective on geopolitical activities around the world. I am Mustafa Janadu, and I am the cynical one in Washington, D.C., right in the seat of the empire. And I'm with Kunle Williams, who's in the seat of corruption in Lagos, Nigeria. How's it going, Kunle Williams? How's Nigeria?
Yeah, we're mad about even
All
though
right.
they thing and they
So
can
let's
put it on it's going to start next year, but it won't defeat us.
Yeah. So we're gonna jump in and start talking about what's going on with Palestine. So while all this talk about Iran, distractions about Iran, and the bombings and the false flags and everything, there's the continual systematic genocide is going on in Palestine. Uh, Over the past couple of weeks, at least 500 to 600 people have been killed trying to get food. Now, Kula, you were saying that a lot of times they put drugs in the food. They put
Oxycontin,
opiates in the food. Can you tell me more about that? Huh?
yeah,
Oxycontin, that's an opiate. Yeah.
yes, that's an opiate, so they can kill more of them. They don't see that
Yeah.
they don't see humans; they see them as chaff. And the most fascinating thing that happened to me of recent was this attack on this punk rock musician for chanting death to the IDF.
Yeah.
And the IDF are the Israeli Defense Force, the military unit, which on that very day, whilst he was chanting that, were killing women and children at food points whilst queuing for food. Now, there are sorts of wrong with this. First of all, the British government said that it's anti-Semitic. Well, the Palestinians are Semites. So if you're saying and it's anti-Semitic, you're only saying that it's anti-Semitic against Israeli Semites, which means that you're now putting a value only on Israelis. And the IDF is not composed of only Israelis. The IDF is composed of Caucasians, it's composed of
Yeah,
Indians.
but come on. We don't need to go deep into that. Let me tell you why. Because you're preaching to the crowd. Everybody knows that because you say death to Israeli soldiers, it doesn't mean that you're anti-Semitic. Because you could be saying it because they're killing Palestinians. If you're saying then it's not anti-Semitic. It's not going against them because anti-Semitic is to say it's going against them because of their race. It's going against them because of their actions, right? Yeah.
Yeah. If you say death to the Iranian scientists, does that mean you hate all Muslims? If you say
No,
death to the
no,
Arabian, does that mean you
no.
hate all Muslims?
We
If you
don't have
put
to waste our breath. I know I'm cutting front of you. We don't even have to argue because they say that if you argue with pigs, you end up in the mud. No matter what you say now, they're not going to listen. We know that everybody with common sense knows that it's not anti-Semitic. Anyway.
everybody knows that, but you can see how much control the mainstream media has, in the sense that although almost everybody is against it, there's so much pushback in mainstream media, and it exposes how much control the mainstream media has is under from Israel, how answerable it is, and how out of touch it is. The governments are so far out of touch with the people. The media outlets have been exposed as propaganda outlets. The question of their validity as journalists, and it's not just because we're discovering this about Israel, because journalists and the press must be able to remain independent to have a healthy democracy. Where they are being chained by somebody who tells them they can or cannot say or have a discussion on something, then you don't have a free press. You don't have a free press, you're no better than Korea or,
Well,
or
it's actually free press. Here's why I say it's free press.
yeah.
It's a free press because free press means the press can come out and speak its mind clearly. So it's free because the people who own it are exercising their free speech, even though they're lying. If you want to do your own free press, you can do it. We're doing ours now. This is free press. Also, CNN is free press, even though it's propaganda, because it's individuals who want to put their own voice out there. So you still have free speech. We can still post our statements. We can go out in public. So what we can't keep saying. The problem is that no country it's going to be impossible for any country to have government sponsored free press because government and businesses are aligned together. So, and the press is owned by private corporations. So the people who own CNN and all these people that are pushing against calling people anti-Semitic, they're doing it because they're the same people who produce the bombs. So what I'm saying is, if you follow the paper money, the people who are killing Palestinians are also the same people who own CNN and business wise. So they're not going to tell you the truth. But it's still free press because they are individuals who collectively come together to create a, a press that disseminates false narratives. I don't think we can ever have government press, because even if you have government sanctioned press, the government will still lie too, because the government wants to keep its power. What do you think? Yeah.
Well, in America, yes, the press is relatively can be private, and although the BBC is privately owned, it is still seen or perceived as a government institution. Hence the name British Broadcasting Corporation. Hence, the BBC are the only channel that if you own a television, because you can access BBC, you have to pay a television license, which when I was there was about £100 a year. Now,
Yeah.
there's a movement of people in England that are refusing to pay their television licenses because they know that that money goes to the BBC to broadcast nonsense. So now the BBC have said,
Yeah.
right, if you have Netflix, you have to pay a TV license. Now, a lot of British people are now going to is it Red or Code Red, the Chinese social media thing,
Yeah,
Red
that's what you
something.
should do. That's what they should do.
So
That's the
that's
way
what
to fight back. Yeah.
Yeah, so there's a massive confrontation between the people of the Western world and their institutions that have turned against them. And the BBC, CNN, Fox News, these may be private, but they are also the guardians of democracy. They are in a position of responsibility that we are not, because they project all the information that shaped the
Yeah,
minds of
I
everybody.
hate to jump in front of you. The reason I'm jumping in front of you is because we're wasted for time. Your reasoning is correct. Your reasoning is correct, but you have to realize the world works on real politics. You're talking about the way it should be. We know that even in Russia, even in the greatest countries on earth, government and business are aligned absolutely. So we know what you're saying is
Yeah.
true, but it's just a waste of time to keep on arguing it, because it's not going to change. We know that. Same thing in Russia. In Russia, they censor free speech. I have friends in Russia who have to be careful if they talk to me on Instagram. So we know. So what I'm trying to say is that you're arguing a rational argument, but you're arguing on the idea that governments work by justice and by fair humanity rules. They don't. Governments just seek to build power for themselves and are disconnected from the power. I can't name one country in this world in which the government actually is connected to its people, because that's not the nature of politics. You know what they call real politics.
Well,
Maybe Cuba. Maybe Cuba. Yeah.
Well, I don't know, but there's free speech, because under the question of when you talk about sedition or hate speech, there's a lot of space under the claim of sedition or treason or free speech, where people use that as an excuse to kill free speech, because it's sort of subjective.
Yeah, but even then, for example, they'll say hate speech on Facebook. Facebook is owned by Zuckerberg. He can silence you even if you don't say anything he disagrees with, because it's his platform. But he can't silence your platform. Like, for example, if we create our own platform and our own website, we can say whatever we want so long as we don't go against the U.S. laws and say overthrow the U.S. government. So my thing is that it's not really free speech. And for us to complain about YouTube banning us or BBC, that's why they have power, because we need to collectively create our own media.
Yeah, the state has
whatever it is.
The American regime has created laws in America that make it illegal for you to criticize Israel. It's a felony.
No. You can criticize Israel. They can't stop me from criticizing Israel.
There are laws that they're putting in place that make it illegal to
they're
criticize.
saying that they can deport people not if you criticize Israel, but if you support Hamas. Show me one law. Like, nah, I'm criticizing Israel. I can go outside in public and criticize Israel. It's not illegal in America.
There's an anti-Semitism act. I'll get the section for you, and it specifically says any criticism of Israel. I'm quoting from it. If I get it, I'll put it up.
That's not a U.S. law. We can Google this. Maybe
it's under the
in the U.S. you can even say I hate Jews.
No, you can't.
That's not a law. You've let this show devolve. Sikula, here's the problem. You've let this devolve into us talking about things which are not on point. We're supposed to be talking about what's happening to the people in Palestine. We've wasted 15 minutes talking about stuff which is irrelevant because it's not going to change. And now I'm going to catch you on that one. There's no U.S. law which says you can't criticize the American citizens can't criticize the Israeli government.
I won't argue with you. Let's move on. I'll send it to you after the show. Let's move on. I'll send you the law after.
The whole rhythm of the show is messed up. These things don't matter. We were supposed to be on point to talk about what's going on in Israel. We're talking about anti-Semitism. You say that on every show. You're repeating the same thing. The distinction between Semitism. It's getting boring because it's not relevant to what's going on in the world right now. What's going on is that these kids are getting killed in Palestine, and we want to talk about the logistics and find out what's going on. The whole rhythm is messed up here, man.
I think we're still on the right rhythm. We can continue on that rhythm. I was just explaining that it still relates to it, but we can come back to that.
Yeah, but it's become a motif. I'm not arguing. What you're saying is true, but you say that every show. Too many off tracks take us off of point, where we should be focused on point for the show.
Let's get back on point then. Let's get back to what we were discussing.
Yeah, so we get back on point. So my point being is that they're starving kids in Palestine, and they're starving people. Then when they come for food, they shoot them until they're desperate. And now Hamas says they're ready for a ceasefire. So what it means is that the tactic worked. Starve these people, kill the children, attack them, and then finally say, okay, they said Trump has said he's ready to give a ceasefire, and Hamas is ready to give a ceasefire. And now that goes according to what we said yesterday, which is the Abraham Accord, which is they want to turn Gaza and Palestine into a technocratic state in which they control the people of Gaza and maybe ship them out. So this tactic that they're using for starving kids and stuff is to make these people desperate so that they'll take whatever they can get. Do you see what I'm saying? Because what their next plan is through Saudi Arabia. Their next plan is to now turn Palestine into a technocratic state where there's surveillance everywhere, where they control what you do and everything, and they'll have other Arab agents like Saudi Arabia controlling the country. But all of that comes because they've broken the will of the Palestinians because people are starving. So they've broken their will, which was the whole point of killing these people for food. They were weaponizing their hunger and their desperation so that they can be broken, so that they can just give power to America and Israel to control them. What are your thoughts? Yeah.
Hamas has always been ready to go for a ceasefire. And they have reached agreements on ceasefires, and it has been Israel that has pulled back at the last minute. Netanyahu was supposed to face corruption charges, but then he now persuaded the judge to delay his corruption case because he said something was going to happen in the war, which would compromise him in his dealings with Iran. I'm not sure that with Gaza. And that was why he managed to delay. So the delays on the ceasefire are not because Hamas doesn't want a ceasefire, but because Israel doesn't want a ceasefire. Yeah, but that's not my point. Numerous.
Listen to what I was saying. What I was saying, see, once again, you're going off topic. What I was saying is that now the U.S. is saying that they're ready for a ceasefire because, and I'm saying that the tactic was that they will break Hamas so that Hamas will now finally accept the ceasefire, because past ones, Netanyahu walked away or the conditions weren't correct. So I guess what I'm saying is that now maybe Hamas will accept, they basically might accept a ceasefire in which they lose power, in which that country is governed by the West. Yeah.
Okay, I'm saying that they have been accepting ceasefires in the past. It has been Israel that's been refusing it. That's the point I'm making.
Yeah, but part of it is because of but even then, maybe they want to, because the terms of the agreements weren't to Israel's liking. But now the terms of the agreement may be to Israel's liking. So in other words, maybe now Palestine will say, okay, we'll give up this, we'll give up sovereignty of our territory. Whereas before they wouldn't. So Israel was holding out. So that they could get a better deal, because they said, no, we want absolute control of that country, so we're not going to sign it. So maybe they wanted to bring Hamas and Palestine to their knees so that they can accept being colonized.
Well, what Israel did was they pretended to accept the deal, and then when they enact the deal or about to enact the deal, they suddenly say they don't want it. They want this other deal. It's not that they just saw the deal and said,
yeah, but eventually there will be a deal. And so the deal will be basically surrender. That's what it will be. That's what they're looking for. They're looking for an absolute surrender. And my argument is that's probably what's going to happen. We won't cease fire unless you surrender. And I think Hamas is ready to surrender because their women and children are getting killed. The morale in Palestine is low. So what I've said is they've totally squashed the freedom movement in Israel. Israel would just, I mean, in Palestine, they would just surrender now.
Well, Israel said that if they do manage to defeat Hamas, all members of Hamas and all the prisoners, they're going to kill them all. So if they
No, no, but here's the thing. They'll just tell them surrender, because how do they even know who's a member? Every male person in Iran is Hamas.
I've never heard
all they have to do is surrender and then leave, because I'm telling you, Trump wants this thing to end. Trump does not want wars. As much as we said Trump let down his MAGA base, he's not really willing for this war. The CIA and these guys forced him into that bombing of Iran. He didn't want to do it. He thought that by letting Israel attack Iran, the CIA told him, oh, it'll be over in 2 days. But it wasn't. Trump does not want this to continue. So my argument is that he'll work out a deal and basically tell these guys, just surrender. And if you surrender, you don't worry, we won't kill you, but you have to leave. My argument is he'll say that you have to leave Palestine. They're going to be shipped to somewhere like Rwanda or Egypt. What do you think?
Well, I've never heard of an occupied force surrendering. What normally happens is, well, when they do surrender, they're rounded up. And the only time I heard of it was in the Warsaw Ghetto.
Where the Germans surrendered. They didn't kill every single German soldier. They killed the Nazi guys. Many people have surrendered. This in they've been in history. Many armies have surrendered. Germany surrendered in World War I. They didn't kill all of them off.
People in occupation groups.
Yeah, but the thing is, they've given up. They've given up. The Native Americans. Eventually, the Native Americans surrendered in certain parts of America when the U.S. government became too powerful. They surrendered, and they said they will live on those small plantations, those reserves. The Native Americans surrendered. They surrendered because they had been wiped out. They had been wiped out so badly, they surrendered.
Yeah,
because
exactly.
So that's at least one case in history. The Native Americans surrendered. Shaka Zulu, the Zulus surrendered.
Most of the population have been wiped out. Most of Palestine's population is still intact.
Oh no, they've been wiped. They've almost lost 1 million people. And let's not forget the Zulus. The Zulus surrendered to the British. So it's not the first time. Occupied countries have surrendered before.
Again, the Zulus were a conventional force that they lost land, and they were a conventional force that were overtaken by an army with better technology.
But what I'm saying is that in history, countries have surrendered. Under Rome, Vercingetorix surrendered to Caesar. It's not the first time.
Yeah, that was an independent country. That was the Gauls were independent. What I'm saying in this case, they had already been like an insertion inside your empire that has already been.
What I'm saying, and also there's always the first. My argument is that Palestine has lost the will to fight now. They have no support from anyone, and they're just getting wiped out mercilessly. So it would make sense for them to surrender. They don't have an army. Palestine doesn't have an army. Where is Hamas? Well, I don't see Hamas on the streets fighting Israel. Where is Hamas? They've lost.
Because they're not going in. I don't know how they're fighting. You know, we're not seeing pictures.
They're not fighting at all. They don't have anti-air missiles. They can't stop if they're fighting. How come people from soldiers are shooting women and children while the soldiers are shooting women and children? Where is Hamas? And it's inside of Gaza. These guys have control. They've controlled it. Huh?
Israeli soldiers are getting killed. They are getting killed.
But not at a high enough, not in a high enough number to make a difference.
Yeah, but I don't know the numbers. Is what I'm saying. I don't have enough information on.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is that this is all conjecture. My argument is that it's just conjecture, but it makes sense. They're tired. They've lost. They just have to surrender. They don't have help from anyone. There's no help. They don't have an economy. They don't have all of their weapons. Where do they get their weapons from? When their weapons run out, they won't even have weapons to fight Israel. Well, how will they fight? They're being blockaded. They don't have any help coming from anywhere in the world. So that even if they want to fight, what are they going to do? Fight with their fists? They've lost. They're going to have to surrender because they don't have help. Other countries had help. Vietnam had help from Russia and China to beat America. Hamas and Palestine have nobody on their side. No one. They can't win. They only have two choices: surrender or be wiped out. If Israel wants to, they can wipe out the whole population. Am I wrong?
Yeah, the Germans alone when they lost all their allies and they're about to lose all their soldiers. And they just knew that they needed to hold long enough until the Americans came in. Yes, they are losing at this point in time, and it all looks hopeless.
The Americans came. The Americans came. Who's going to come? Who's going to come to help Palestine? No one. Nobody's going to come and help Palestine. Nobody.
The only people that can help Palestine are the people doing the killing itself, which is America and Israel. And the only way that can happen is for America to get back its polity from the Zionists that control it. And I don't know, and maybe you're probably right, that Palestine doesn't have that kind of time to survive long enough for that to happen. And they probably, because that would take a couple of cycles. I know the Palestinians have been fighting a losing war for 78 years, but there's not been this act of genocide. Now, there's another question of the backlash. What backlash will Israel receive from this? Will they continue to go on as a state? Will they be accepted by all the other countries? Because the world is in outrage. And even if the governments of the world pretend that they're okay with this, their people are not. So I don't know what the backlash will be. Also, when it comes to rebuilding all these places and putting the infrastructures back, the Israelis have always been dependent on the Palestinians for manpower, for building their infrastructure back. So they're going to have to import a load of people from somewhere to do all this rebuilding, even if whether it's Gaza, whether it's Israel. So I don't know whether they're going to look for a new population to do that low income work, or whether they're going to try to keep, because if they keep the Palestinians, they're always going to remain a threat. And
so that goes back to what I was saying before. They'll have biometrics. The new plan for the Abraham Accord is that if Palestinians are there, they will be monitored every movement that they do. So it'll just be like ancient Egypt, where you have people building pyramids. They'll be slaves. So what this looks like is they'll be slaves.
Yeah,
and they'll be happy just to be alive. They'll be happy just to be alive.
It'll work for a while, but it will never sustain itself. In this kind of modern world, it won't sustain itself. It will work for a while, but it won't sustain itself, because injustice cannot sustain itself. And there's always new people born, new young people.
You're saying injustice cannot sustain itself. Injustice has, the U.S. empire, which is based on injustice, has not fallen. So long as the U.S. exists and Great Britain exists and Europe exists, it proves that justice never wins, because none of these nations are just. And they have continued for 500 years of genocidal. The U.S. has wiped out the Native Americans. They killed more than 100 million Black people through the slave Atlantic trade. They've killed people in Iran. So to me, it looks like justice doesn't win. It doesn't win.
But now it doesn't. But if they don't change their ways, then, an empire cannot sustain itself on injustice. That's what breaks empires, when they become unjust.
No. What destroys empires is overstretching their reach.
Yes, but even when you overstretch your reach, if you provide basic justice, you can keep your empire for a long time. That's why the Germans.
Yeah, but what they'll do is they'll provide justice for their own people, but not for the. So what I'm saying is that Israel will take care of its people and everything. They'll just use the Palestinians as slaves, and nobody will care.
Well, if you're too brutal in your occupation, you won't be able to sustain.
Oh, it's not brutal enough. They've been killing children. They've killed 58,000 women and children. Is that not brutal enough? I don't see anybody taking up arms against them.
I'm talking about long term, and I'm also talking about, for example, now Ireland is one of the first countries.
Okay,
that's not a big deal, but
yeah, what can Ireland do? Ireland doesn't have money. So long as the U.S. is in power, they can do whatever they want.
It's a seed. It's a seed. Ireland has said they're no longer going to trade with Israel. That's the first Western country to do so. Spain looks like they're going that way. It's a small seed, but when you plant it, it grows, and more people will join that, and eventually it will become something else.
We'll be dead by then. We'll be dead by then. We won't see it.
I think it would happen in the next 5 years. I think that we may or may not see Israel continue to survive in the next 5 years. It may be wiped out. Not violently, but it may be boycotted out.
Yeah, we'll have to wait and see. Okay, so let's head out. Yeah, take us out, because we've done almost an hour, man. Not an hour, really, like 30 minutes.
So it's been a passion day. We've diverted ourselves a little bit, going in and out of the disaster that is Gaza and Palestine. We've looked at the semantics of the other areas of it. And we do see that the situation is very dire for the Palestinians and for humanity. And all we can do is pray and hope for better. And from myself and Mustafa, I wish you adieu, farewell, and we'll see you on the next one.
Thank you. Yes, I'll probably see you tomorrow for one show at Tire. Okay, thanks. Okay.
All right.
This shit is getting out of control, though. This war.
I know.
Let me turn this down. Yes, I'll see you later. I'm doing a show with these guys.